The sun was high in the sky, warming everything it touched. The air at Falcon Ridge was fresh and full of excitement. People laughed, shouted, and took videos on their phones. Everyone had come here for one reason: to bungee jump off the tallest platform in the state. At the back of the long line stood a woman named Amani Fields. She wore a soft green jacket, blue jeans, and sneakers that looked well-worn but strong. Her hair was pulled back into a low bun, and she had a backpack with her. She looked calm, not nervous at all. Some people looked around with shaky hands and bouncing knees. Amani stood still like a tree that had seen many storms. She had waited in line for nearly an hour. She listened to the wind and watched birds flying above. She smiled to herself. This was supposed to be a fun day, just her and the sky. At the front of the line, a young man named Trevor Maddox was causing a scene. He wore sunglasses, shiny white sneakers, and a bright red shirt with his name printed on it. His friend held a phone and kept recording everything. Trevor yelled, laughed loudly, and jumped in front of others in the line. "Hey everyone," he shouted. "Get ready for the craziest jump ever. Your boy Trevor is about to fly." The crowd laughed. Some rolled their eyes. Others looked annoyed, but no one said anything. Trevor kept talking like he was the only person that mattered. He pushed past a little boy and cut the line without asking. The workers at the bungee stand did not stop him. In fact, they laughed with him like he was a star. Amani watched quietly. Her eyes were steady. She did not say a word. She just waited her turn. A few spots ahead of her stood a woman named Kira Tomlin. Kira had curly brown hair and carried a small camera around her neck. She looked around as if she noticed something wasn't right. Her eyes met Amani's for a moment, and then she quickly looked away. She didn't speak, but something about her expression said she was unsure about what she was seeing. Finally, Trevor made his jump. He screamed the whole way down. His friend cheered. Everyone clapped. The workers helped him up, laughing and patting him on the back. The line moved forward. People took turns jumping, cheering, and hugging their friends. Soon it was Amani's turn. She stepped forward. Her backpack bounced gently on her shoulders as she walked toward the main platform. The worker at the front, a young man named Riley Green, looked at her and paused. His smile faded for a moment. He looked her up and down. Then he looked at the harness she was wearing. "Hey," he said, scratching his head. I don't think that's gonna work." Amani tilted her head. Her voice was soft but clear. "This is my own harness. I brought it because it's safer. I've used it before." Riley laughed nervously. "Yeah, but we have our own equipment here. We don't usually let people bring their own stuff. You sure that thing's even rated for this kind of drop?" A few people in line turned their heads. Some started whispering. Amani stayed calm. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a small card. "It's certified. I've done over 20 jumps with it. I also helped design it." Riley frowned. "Yeah, but it's kind of different, you know? We've had issues before with... Well, it's not personal. It's just you might need a special kind of setup." "What kind of setup?" Amani asked. "You know," Riley said slowly, "for people with different builds. Safety comes first, right?" His voice was louder now. People behind Amani could hear him clearly. A few chuckles came from the back. One voice said, "She might break the cord." Another laughed. Trevor's friend, still recording, zoomed in on Amani. Amani stood still. She did not move. Her face was calm, but her eyes, deep and strong, looked directly into Riley's. "Are you saying I can't jump because of how I look?" she asked. Riley raised his hands. No, nothing like that. I just want to keep everyone safe." Trevor's voice called out from the back. "Man, let her jump if she wants to. If she breaks it, we'll get it on camera." More laughter followed. Amani looked at the platform. She looked at the long cord. She looked at the sky above her. Then she looked back at Riley. "Is the manager here?" she asked. Riley shifted his feet. Not right now. He's on break." Amani nodded once. She put her card back into her bag. She turned away from the platform. She walked back down the stairs without saying another word. The line grew quiet for a moment. Then the sounds came back. Laughter. Whispering. Phone cameras clicking. Kira watched Amani as she walked past. She wanted to say something. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. She stayed quiet. Amani reached the grass below and sat on a bench. She pulled out her phone. She opened the camera and pressed record. Her voice was still calm, still soft. "I came to jump today," she said to the screen. "I brought my own safety gear. I've jumped many times before, but something happened up there. Something you need to see." She finished the recording and saved it. She looked up at the platform again. The wind moved through her hair. She was not angry. She was not crying. But something inside her had been lit like a small fire. Something had changed. And this was just the beginning. Amani sat on the bench beneath the tall bungee platform. The voices above her sounded muffled now, like distant echoes carried by the wind. She took a deep breath and looked down at her phone. The video she had recorded just moments ago stared back at her from the screen. She watched it again, not because she needed to, but because she wanted to be sure of what she felt. Her voice in the recording was calm. Her eyes were clear. Her words were soft but powerful. She had not shouted. She had not begged. She had told the truth. That was enough. All around her, people kept moving. Some continued to laugh. Some kept recording videos for their social media pages. Others tried to ignore what had just happened. The line on the platform above was already moving again. It was as if nothing strange had occurred. As if her moment of embarrassment meant nothing. But for Amani, it meant everything. She remembered being a child at school, sitting at her desk while the teacher talked about science. Her hand was always raised high, full of answers and ideas. But sometimes the teacher would pick someone else, even when her hand was the only one in the air. She remembered how kids had laughed when she once said she wanted to become an engineer. They told her it was not for girls like her. Girls like her were supposed to be quiet, simple, safe. Her mind had always been sharp. Her heart had always been strong. But the world did not always care. Now, years later, she had worked hard, studied harder, and became something even bigger than her childhood dreams. She had helped create the very tools that made bungee jumping safer for all kinds of people. She had worked on materials that stretched without breaking. She had helped design harnesses that could hold every shape and size. She had done all this not to prove a point but to open doors, to make room for people like her, people who had been left out. And still, she had been told she could not jump. A voice pulled her out of her thoughts. It was Trevor again. He had come down from the platform and now walked nearby with his phone still recording. He pointed the camera toward Amani. "Hey," he said with a fake friendly grin. "Are you gonna post that video? Maybe tag me so I can get in on the views." That was wild up there. Amani looked up at him but said nothing. She stared at him long enough that he began to shift his feet. "I mean, no hard feelings, right?" he said with a laugh. The guy was just doing his job. Safety and all that. She stood up slowly. Not to confront him. Not to argue. She simply no longer wanted to share the same bench. Trevor called after her. "Come on. It's not a big deal. Don't be so serious. It's just bungee jumping." Amani walked away without answering. She passed a group of teens who whispered as she moved by. One of them giggled. Another one stared at her like she was a strange puzzle. Their eyes felt like cold fingers on her skin. Nearby, Kira still stood in line. She watched everything happen. Her fingers gripped the strap of her camera. Her mouth was dry. Her heart beat faster than usual. She wanted to speak. She wanted to walk up to Amani and say something kind. Something true. But the words stuck in her throat like glue. Kira had seen unfair things before. She had once watched a classmate get yelled at by a teacher for something he did not do. She had said nothing then too. She had thought it was not her problem. She had told herself it was not her place. Now, watching Amani walk alone toward the far side of the park, she felt the same fear, the same silence. But this time, something inside her whispered that she could not keep walking away. Amani found a quiet corner of the park near a small tree. The noise of the crowd faded behind her. She opened her phone again and logged into a private online group called Leap Without Limits. It was a place she had helped build years ago with friends from college. The group was for people of color who loved outdoor sports and activities. They shared stories, tips, and warnings. They lifted each other up. She uploaded the video she had taken. She wrote a short caption underneath it. "This is what happened to me today. Same platform, same safety rules, same love for the jump. But I was told I could not go." She turned off the screen and sat under the tree. The shade cooled her skin. A breeze passed gently through the leaves above her. She leaned her head back and closed her eyes. For a moment she was not angry. She was not tired. She was simply still. She thought of her old college mentor, Professor Della Knox, a woman with silver hair and eyes that saw through everything. Professor Knox had once told her, "People will try to shrink you, not because you are wrong but because they are scared of your size. Stand tall anyway." Amani smiled a little at that memory. She had stood tall today. She had not shouted. She had not begged. She had told the truth. An hour passed. The video had been shared dozens of times already. Then hundreds. Then thousands. People began commenting. "This is not okay. I had the same experience at a different park. They need to fix this." She handled that with so much grace. Let her jump. Amani watched the comments come in, her eyes wide. She had not expected so many people to care. She had thought it would be another quiet story. Another moment passed over. But it was not. This time people saw her. Even some workers from other bungee parks started to respond. One said, "I work at a site in Colorado and we use the harness she designed. It's one of the best." Another said, "That is Apex Gravity Tech. She should have been treated like a VIP." Trevor's video of the same moment, the one where he had laughed, started going viral too. But the comments under his post were different. "Why are you mocking her? She deserved better. This is why people speak up." Not funny. Kira, still at the park, sat on a bench and opened her phone. She found Amani's post. She read every word. She watched the video again. And then she typed a message. Not to make herself feel better. Not to be seen. But because it was time. "I was there. I should have said something. I'm sorry. This was not fair. You were treated badly and I stayed quiet. That will not happen again." She hit send. Amani read the message minutes later. She did not smile. She did not frown. She simply breathed in, then out, slowly. Sometimes the sky does not open all at once. Sometimes it starts with one voice, then another, and soon the clouds begin to shift. This was the beginning of something more. The sky above Falcon Ridge had turned a soft gold. The afternoon sun was beginning to dip, painting everything in warm colors. The laughter and cheering on the bungee platform continued, but in a different way now. People were still jumping, but their voices had changed. Some whispered about the video they had seen. Some looked around nervously, as if trying to find Amani. Others kept their heads low, pretending they had never laughed or filmed or said anything at all. Amani was still sitting under the tree where the wind touched her face like a quiet friend. Her phone buzzed again and again. New messages. More comments. More people sharing the story. She had not planned any of this. She had only spoken her truth. But now that truth was flying like a kite across the internet. Somewhere far away, in a quiet office filled with blueprints and metal parts, a woman in a white lab coat sat at a desk. Her name was Professor Della Knox, the same woman who had once taught Amani about physics and courage. Her silver hair was pulled back and her eyes were sharp, even behind her glasses. She had not seen Amani in person for years, but when the video reached her inbox, she knew exactly who the woman in the green jacket was. Della watched the video with her hand resting on her chin. She did not cry. She did not speak. When it was over, she stood up and went to her bookshelf. She pulled out a folder with Amani's name on it. Inside were notes from old projects, sketches of harness designs, and a photo of Amani smiling next to a wall full of medals. Della held the photo in her hand and whispered to herself, "She remembered everything I taught her. And then she made it even better. Back at Falcon Ridge, Amani continued to read the comments pouring in. People were beginning to tell their own stories. A woman wrote about being told to leave a rock-climbing gym because her hair was too messy. A young man said he was once made to wear an old harness that pinched his skin because the worker said it was the only size left. Another person shared that they never tried skydiving because they were afraid of being laughed at for their body. Amani read each one slowly. Her eyes moved carefully from word to word. She was not surprised. She was not shocked. But she felt something rising inside her. Not anger, not sadness, something stronger. A feeling that she had not let herself carry for a long time. She stood up and walked to the edge of the field. From there she could still see the platform. She could see Riley handing a harness to the next person. He was quieter now. He moved a little slower. Perhaps someone had shown him the video. Perhaps he was beginning to understand. Or perhaps he was just nervous. Car pulled up nearby. It was sleek and dark blue with tinted windows. A tall man stepped out. His name was Mr. Calvin Rooks, and he was the regional manager for Apex Gravity, the company that made most of the bungee equipment used in the state. He had been sent by the head office after someone there saw the video and recognized the harness Amani had used. He walked across the grass with purpose, holding a small case in one hand. When he reached Amani, he stopped and looked her in the eye. "Are you Amani Fields?" he asked. She nodded. "I am Calvin Rooks from Apex Gravity. I saw your video. I also saw your design. I came to say thank you. And I came to ask you a question." Amani raised an eyebrow. "What question? Would you be willing to speak about this? Not just online. In person. We want to support you. We want to show the world who you are." Amani folded her arms. "Why now? Why not before?" Mr. Rooks looked down at the grass. "We should have done it before. That is the truth. But now that people are listening, we need to make sure they hear the right voices." Amani did not answer right away. She looked back at the platform one more time. The memory of being told no still sat on her shoulders. But beside that memory was something else now. A growing army of voices. A network of strangers who had become a shield around her. She finally spoke. "I will not do it for praise. I will do it for change. If we are going to speak, we are going to speak clearly. No half steps. No safe talk. We are going to talk about who gets to belong and who gets pushed out." Mr. Rooks nodded. "I understand. I will follow your lead." Later that evening, Amani sat at her small kitchen table with her laptop open. She joined a live stream with members of Leap Without Limits. The screen was filled with faces. Some were smiling. Some were serious. All were ready to listen. Amani leaned close to the camera. Her voice was steady. "I want to tell you what happened. But more than that, I want to talk about what happens to all of us when we are made to feel small. I was told today that I needed something special to jump. I was told it was for my safety. But we know what that really means. I was told I was too much. Too different. Too heavy. Too black." The faces on the screen nodded. Some people wiped their eyes. I did not get angry. I did not yell. But I remembered every time this happened before. And I decided to stop pretending it was okay. I helped design the very gear they use. I made it safer. I made it stronger. Not for fame. For fairness. And yet I was still told no. She paused. But now people are listening. Now they are seeing what we already knew. That the rules are not always fair. That the smiles are not always kind. And that silence helps no one. So I'm going to speak. I'm going to keep speaking. And I want all of you to do the same. The chat box beside the video filled with messages. Words of support. Words of love. Words of strength. After the live stream ended, Amani sat back in her chair. She was tired, but her spirit felt full. She looked out her window and saw the stars beginning to appear. Small lights in a big sky. She remembered what Professor Knox had once told her. That people would try to shrink her. That she must stay tall. So she did. And the world was starting to rise with her. The morning sun filtered softly through the curtains of Amani's small apartment. It was quiet inside except for the gentle hum of the city waking up outside her window. She sat at her kitchen table, sipping a cup of tea that had cooled just enough to be pleasant. Her phone lay beside her, buzzing gently as new messages arrived. The world was still spinning fast, but Amani felt a calm inside, like a steady drumbeat beneath the noise. Since the day at Falcon Ridge, things had changed. Slowly, carefully, the story she shared was moving beyond her own circle. People from many places, cities, towns, small communities, had reached out. They sent words of encouragement, stories of their own struggles, and sometimes just simple thank yous for speaking up. One message came from a woman named Jazeera Bell, a coach who trained young athletes in track and field. Jazeera wrote about how she had seen similar discrimination happen to one of her runners, a girl who was told she was not fit to compete because of her size and the way her hair looked under the stadium lights. Jazeera said she wanted to connect with Amani and work together to make sports safer and more welcoming for everyone. Another message arrived from a man named Malik Owens, who worked in a park near the mountains. Malik shared how his job involved setting up ropes courses for visitors. He told Amani about the small changes he was pushing for in his workplace. He wanted to make sure no one felt left out because of how they looked or where they came from. Amani read each message with care. She felt the weight of so many stories. The pain behind the words was real, but so was the hope. Later that day, she met with Kira at a small cafe near the park. Kira had come with a new sense of purpose. Her camera hung loosely around her neck, but her eyes were focused. She had a notebook filled with questions and ideas. "I kept thinking about what happened," Kira said quietly as they sat down. "How easy it was to stay silent. But I don't want to be silent anymore. I want to help tell the real stories." Amani nodded. "Takes courage to speak. You already have it just by being here." Kira smiled. "I want to use my camera for something good, to show people what's really happening. Not just the fun parts, the parts we don't usually talk about." Together, they began planning a project. A series of short videos and interviews that would highlight the experiences of people like Amani, Malik, Jazeera, and others. The goal was simple: to give voice to those who had been quiet for too long. Meanwhile, word about Amani's story had reached local news stations. A reporter named Nia Calloway called her one afternoon. Nia was kind and patient on the phone. She listened carefully as Amani explained what happened at the bungee jump and why it mattered. "We want to share your story," Nia said. "Not just the incident, but the bigger picture. The fight for fairness, respect, and safety for everyone. Would you be willing to speak on camera?" Amani thought for a moment. The idea of being on television made her nervous. But she also knew this was another chance to make change. "Yes," she said softly, "if it helps people understand." The interview was scheduled for the next week. Amani spent her days preparing. She practiced speaking clearly and honestly. She thought about the young people who might watch and feel inspired. She thought about the workers at the park who needed to hear the truth. As the day of the interview arrived, Amani stood in front of the camera with calm determination. Nia asked questions that gave Amani space to explain her journey, her passion for outdoor sports, and the challenges she faced. When the segment aired on local news, it touched many hearts. Calls and emails came flooding into the station. People thanked Amani for her bravery. Some shared their own stories of exclusion. Others asked how they could help. The story reached the attention of Apex Gravity's head office. A team was sent to Falcon Ridge to review safety policies and training. They promised to work with community leaders to create more inclusive spaces. Back at the park, Riley Green approached Amani one afternoon. His face was more open than before. "I watched your interview," he said quietly. "I'm sorry for how I acted. I didn't understand. But I want to do better." Amani smiled gently. "Thank you. It's never too late to learn." The next months were filled with meetings, planning sessions, and community events. Amani traveled to schools and sports clubs to speak about safety and inclusion. She saw her work growing like a seed pushed into the earth. It needed time, care, and patience to bloom. One evening, after a long day of speaking at a youth center, Amani received a message from Professor Della Knox. The message was short but powerful. "You are making waves. Keep going." The world needs your voice. Amani read the message and felt the fire inside her glow warmer than ever. She knew the road ahead would not be easy, but she also knew she was not alone. Together, with voices growing louder and stronger, change was coming. The months that followed felt like a wave that kept growing larger and stronger. Amani's story had become more than just a moment at a bungee platform. It had turned into a movement of voices that refused to be quiet, a movement that stretched across cities, parks, and even schools. It was a story about fairness, respect, and the power of standing tall when the world tries to push you down. Amani stood at the entrance of Falcon Ridge once again. The sun was warm on her skin, and the smell of fresh pine trees filled the air. But this time, everything felt different. The park was buzzing with new energy. Signs had been changed to show that everyone was welcome. Workers wore badges with messages about kindness and safety. New harnesses, including some that Amani had helped design, were being tested. And there were smiles. Real smiles. Not the ones that hide fear or shame. Riley Green walked up to her with a small box in his hands. "I wanted to give you this," he said. Inside the box was a small medal. It was not for winning a race or making a jump. It was a medal for courage, for standing up when it mattered most. Amani held the medal carefully. She thought of all the people who had helped her get here. Kira with her camera and her words. Jazaira coaching young athletes to believe in themselves. Malik working to change rules so no one would feel left out. Professor Knox's quiet wisdom that had carried her through years of challenges. "It's not just me," Amani said softly. "It's all of us. Together." As the day went on, a crowd gathered for a special event. Amani was invited to speak in front of families, friends, and park workers. Her voice was steady and full of hope as she shared the journey from that difficult day on the platform to the changes that had begun to take root. "This story is not just about a bungee jump," she said. "It is about every time someone has been told they don't belong. It is about every moment someone has been made to feel small because of who they are. And it is about what happens when we say enough is enough. When we lift each other up instead of tearing each other down." She looked out at the crowd. Children with wide eyes, parents holding hands, workers nodding in agreement. "We all have a role to play," Amani continued. "Whether you are jumping from a platform, coaching a team, or simply listening to a story, we have to choose kindness. We have to choose fairness. And we have to choose to stand up when it is hard." The applause was loud and lasting. It was a sound filled with promise. A sound that said things could be different. A sound that said change was possible. That evening, as the stars began to light the sky, Amani sat quietly at home. Her phone was full of messages from people she had never met. People who had been inspired by her story. People who wanted to share their own. People who wanted to be part of something bigger. She knew this was only the beginning. Before the night ended, Amani opened a new video on her phone. It was a message she had prepared to share with everyone who had followed her journey. Her voice was calm, her smile warm. "Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing. Together, we can make sure no one is made to feel small because of who they are. If you want to help, if you want to be part of this movement, please like this video. Please subscribe to hear more stories. And please share your voice, because when we speak, we change the world." She paused and looked directly at the camera. "This is our story, our time. Let's rise together." Amani pressed send and watched as the likes and subscriptions began to grow. The screen filled with comments of support, love, and hope. Her heart swelled with a quiet joy. Outside, the night was calm. But inside, a new light was shining. A light fueled by courage, truth, and the unbreakable power of community. And so the journey continued. One voice, one story, one step forward. Together. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like and subscribe. Sharing stories like Amani's helps voices grow louder and change come faster. Your support means the world. Thank you for being part of this journey.